All right, so here it is, the quadratic formula. So this is the introduction to this formula. You can use it to solve any quadratic. It has a lot of uses. A lot of kids, when I'm doing the factoring and the complete the square and all that, they usually will bring this up and say, look, my dad said just use this for everything. And that's true. It is useful in that way, and you can use it for everything. But the other things we've been talking about sometimes are easier than doing this. So basically what it is a formula. So it tells you actually right away what x is equal to. And the way you figure that out is you just put the numbers inside the formula here, and then you get the value of x. So in order for you to be able to do that, your equation has to be in the ABC format we've talked about before, where you've got your lead term here, your x term here, and then your constant term on the end like that. So first of all, make sure that it's in that order and that it's equal to 0. Sometimes what happens is you're rewriting the equation and you end up switching these or something, and then stuff's in the wrong place. So you can see I have this equation here, 3x squared plus 12x plus 12, and all I did was I put the numbers where they belong in the equation. So the a term ends up here and here as seen on the formula, the b term ends up here and here, and then the c term is just there. So it's all colored so you can see what I did with it. At that point, all you're doing is kind of simplifying this. So the first thing I usually do is I focus on the radical. So you can see I did 12 times 12, which is 144. Negative 4 times 3 times 12 is negative 144. 144 minus 144 turns out 0. That doesn't always happen. I'm using this example so you can see what to do when it does, because it does occur. So it's 0, so then there is really no radical. So I end up with a negative 12 over 6. The plus or minus goes away because what is negative 12 plus 0? What is negative 12 minus 0? It is, of course, the same thing. It is negative 12. So the answer here is just negative 2. Before we go on, though, and I do an example, I just wanted to point something out, though, with this one as well. And that's important, this important fact. Always simplify if you can. So what that means is if you look at a quadratic and all of the terms are divisible by something, you should divide it by that. So I was able to do it without doing that. Again, you're using calculators and stuff, but you always want to do that first because you want to avoid very large numbers in here. If there's bigger numbers, sometimes there's more mistakes. The second reason is if a lot of times when you simplify these by dividing it, by 3, 2, 5, whatever, you end up with something like this. Now, I don't know about you, but at this point, you should be able to kind of figure this out in your head. This is real simple factoring. This is a perfect square. It's x plus 2 squared, which means the answer is, of course, negative 2. So if you can spot something really easy like that, you don't have to go to the trouble of filling in the quadratic formula. So just wanted to point that out before I did an example. So here's an example. Now what I would think it's a good idea in the beginning is when you're doing this, I always tell my students to write the quadratic formula at the top of their paper. Sometimes the teacher writes it on the board and they keep craning their neck, copying it down, looking at it. Just put it at the top of your paper so you can refer to it. So then what I'm going to do is another tip is to sort of write A, B, and C above your trinomials so that you don't get confused when you're filling this in. Now, the first thing is, when I do minus b, when I fill this in, I always put it in parentheses. It might seem like an unnecessary step, but a lot of times the b term is negative, and I'll see a lot of mistakes out there because it's a negative negative, which means it turns positive. So do yourself a favor and put things in parentheses when you plug them into equations. So that's squared minus 4a, which is 2, c, which is minus 28, and then 2 times 2. Okay? So if I have a calculator or something, a lot of times you can type this guy straight in there and you can get the answer. However, I like to do things without a calculator so you can see all the steps. So think about what I just said. 2, 10, and 28. I could actually make this a lot easier to work with by simplifying my equation first. So I'm going to do that. So if you have a calculator, great, you could do this. You're going to get the same answer. But I'm going to go ahead and divide everything here by 2. Okay. So now that I have that, this is an actual easy factoring thing. I could do it in my head now. Wonderful. I wouldn't have to do this. So that's one benefit of doing it. But this video is on how to use the formula, so I'm going to use the formula to do it. So I have minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is a 1. If there isn't a coefficient, it's just a 1. And then my c term is minus 14. And all of that good stuff over 2a, which is that. Okay? So now I have minus 5 plus or minus, and I'm going to start working on the radical here. So that's a 25, and then that is going to be plus negative 4 times 1, and that is plus 56. And then I'm going to get a 2 down here. And this turns out to be 81. And then I have minus 5 plus or minus 9 over 2. Okay, so we talked about this in the Complete the Squares video. You might want to go back and look at that. But this basically means there's sort of two numbers here in this expression. So this means minus 5 plus 9 over 2. And it means minus 5 minus 9 over 2. So minus 5 plus 9 is 4 over 2. So one of my answers is a 2. And then minus 5 and a minus 9 is minus 14 over 2, which is a minus 7. So my solution set on this guy would be negative 7, comma 2. Okay, so that's how you use the quadratic formula. There's nothing else to it.